Welcome to today's podcast. My name is Pearlie Brewer, and I will be your host. Today's podcast guest is Josh Hickey. Josh is an account manager for safety and industrial sales at Chandler Sales in St. John. Welcome, Josh. Thank you for agreeing to be with us today.
Thank you, Pearlie. Happy to be here.
Today's podcast is going to focus on two topics. Number one, the changes in personal protective equipment, commonly referred to as PPE, that has occurred over the last decade, as well as number two, the increased production of PPE designed specifically for the female workforce. Let's start, Josh, by getting you to tell us about your organization, Chandler Sales, and what kinds of products do you sell or lease or make available to your customers?
Chandler Sales is an Atlantic Canadian distributor. We carry 7 different divisions of products on top of the safety industrial where the PPE and that stuff will come into play. There's also apparel and promotion, sanitation, food service, office environments, and alarm and comm divisions. So anything and all relating to that stuff.
So what kinds of changes have you seen in personal protective equipment over the years? People always used to say PPE, it's hot, it's uncomfortable, makes my job more difficult to do. What kinds of changes have you personally seen yourself?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm into my 3rd year of sales, and I'm coming from a background of trades experience. I've been on the tools and worked around a lot of the different heavy industrial sites from Newfoundland to New Brunswick here over the past 20 years or so. Now that I'm part of the other side of the business and procuring and selling these products, it's really neat to work with some of our vendor suppliers, manufacturers to learn and discover what they're doing and how they're making all that stuff better. There's new technology when it comes to the materials on what it's made out of, how it's made. The gloves are a big thing. I was a welder in my past life, and I would always take off my gloves to handle and touch smaller products, bolts, pieces, that kind of stuff. And, of course, whenever you don't wear your PPE is when you get bit. We're selling some new gloves now that are very dexterous. They're very thin. Highest level cut protection on the market and a very thin glove. It's almost like a disposable nitrile glove, like a box of 50 gloves that you would just go through. But these are the play I make with all of our customers is there's no excuse to take your gloves off to handle these things. They're so thin, you can handle smaller parts and pieces. The materials and what they're made out of when it comes to like the hot work and it used to always be the big, heavy leather welding jacket. Now there's all these new FR materials, stuff like that to make it a bit more comfortable and have our folks keep wearing their PPE and try to work through that stuff. Impact protection is another one as well in the glove line. A lot of people with back of hand injuries and stuff like that. So there's more materials being added to gloves and padding to the back of the hand, and vibration is another one that's been coming up a lot, gel palms and stuff like that to try to take the vibrations out of going into people's hands and arms and stuff like that.
Now, people, as I said a moment ago, always complain about equipment, for example, being hot. What kinds of changes have you seen, and what can you offer to someone, say, that complains about some of the equipment they're wearing, whether it's glasses, steam up, and all this sort of thing, that makes their job actually easier than they would have, say, a decade ago?
Well, I might be corrected on this, but I don't feel like a decade ago there was some of the products that we've sold. Our summers are getting much hotter. Especially inland here in New Brunswick, we don't get the beautiful AC bay breeze from the Fundy. But cooling products, there's a lot of new products out now that you could dip in water and freeze, cooling vests, cooling bandanas, all this type of equipment that, I was happy to just start wearing and getting into. You get in some really hot environments and stuff like that, you get heat stroked. So these new products, and then a lot of different manufacturer suppliers are making their version of it, but there's, different equipment that has fans built into it to keep air moving around, or just keeping your core cooler so you can stay on task longer. That's one that really popped out to me the other year. We sold a fair bit of it to some businesses inland in the province, where it's, obviously the humidity and the heat that's bad enough, let alone if guys are having to do, a nasty job or in a nasty spot and it's uncomfortable and hot, So, cooling gear is the big one that jumps out to me.
Recently, we've started seeing PPE being designed and sold specifically for the female audience. What have you seen so far in PPE for females?
Me, myself, trying to take care of the females in the workforce, it's a big struggle for ourselves and our manufacturers. I really feel like we're still very much playing catch up to take care of the ladies. Smaller gloves to the bigger gloves, the big people to the small people, it's sometimes hard to find PPE to fit. And we also need a good fit, because if not, it's going to turn into another safety hazard. So I know that most of my gloves years ago, we would only carry the medium and the large and the XL for mostly the men in the workforce. But now we're into these small, double extra small gloves. But some suppliers, manufacturers are getting ahead of it. There's a group that Superior Glove we sell a lot of. They make a lady-sized welding glove, and it goes from a medium to small to an extra small. And I know very much maybe an interview down the road with somebody else here on the apparel side of Chandler can speak more to this, but finding form-fitting women's designed apparel to allow them to be comfortable and do their job. But it's still very much a catch-up game. There's not as many options for the ladies as opposed to, obviously, it was very much a male-dominant workforce here up until the past couple decades, where and I don't think anybody realized how fast the women entered the workforce and jumped in, and it's still a catch-up game.
So how is it selling to date? Are you getting more women coming in and asking for specific PPE?
Yeah, very much so. The gloves, like I say, is one thing, but then, we're all different shapes and sizes, men and women. Now also we're bringing in and stocking, carrying more products to have at hand. Eyewear, our safety glasses, stuff like that. Typically the standard eyewear don't fit a petite lady or smaller gentleman, so we have narrow fitting eyewear, the smaller glasses, the new cuts and stitching into the apparel products to kind of take care of those folks. It's consulting. I know selling is the drive, but I view myself as more of a consultant to kind of go in and talk to our workforce and go to work to find a solution to fit their problem, be it something not fitting correctly or finding that right size glove or glass or whatever the case may be.
Now, are you finding any requests that are coming in or any areas that they're asking for, females are asking for, that you can't fulfill at this time? Maybe that's going to be more of a catch-up?
Yeah, just like we already spoke, it's everything. We follow rest equipment. I've only found, I think, one supplier that makes something specific to women. It's stock, it's availability, it's manufacturer's lead times. Then you get into learning more about your manufacturer and your vendor on they're having problems producing their materials or having enough. The minimum orders is something that usually ties a lot of us to going at a product or not. Obviously, there needs to be some numbers to make it justified for everybody to go at it. But I feel like that's getting some backing now as more and more women enter the workforce. It's you never seen them when I was on the tools 20 years ago, but now it's every job site I walk on. There's always a lady in the workforce, so it's still very much a catch-up game.
So obviously in health and safety, there's a lot more to keeping folks safe than just PPE. What other kinds of items do you lease or sell to keep workplaces healthy and safe?
Well, like I mentioned, a pretty wide array here at Chandler. When it comes to the apparel and promotional side of things, I know that FR clothing, fire resistant, fire retardant, is something that's, came to the market here some time ago, and we stock carry, sell that stuff. And it comes to, sanitation, keeping our workplaces safe and clean. Obviously, post-COVID, we have a new appreciation for the cleanliness, not just at home, but on our job sites where we spend our time. So making sure that everybody's aware of, disinfecting to sanitizing and the difference, and then spraying a product onto a surface and giving it a proper dwell time so it can clean before it's wiped off. Things like that, I'm learning the new stresses of the office environment and being seated for some time. That's a different kind of physical stress on our body. So we sell ergonomic office environments. We have office chairs with lumbar adjustable arms so people can be comfortable, monitor arms to make sure everything's properly aligned, to reduce preventative neck strains and stuff like that. You got desks now that, have some mechanisms in them that make them stand so people can kind of get up and get the blood movement again. Task lights at desks, people aren't straining, stuff like that. And alarm communications, I think, speaks for itself. Basically, a little bit of everything from Chandler goes into a workforce. And also, myself, like I say, I speak from a welding background, learning more about welding automation. A great company in Ontario, Gulco International, sells welding automation, motion. Sometimes we don't got to have a guy on his hands and knees crawling around and really exerting himself. Now we have, robotic welders, and we have track equipment and stuff like that. You can put the whip on the equipment and kind of keep your face and eyes and head out of that smoke and that contaminant, and make it easier on the guys doing the task. Automation is something that's really coming into the workforce more and more, as the workforce isn't the same post-COVID. I know every business I talk to struggles to find the workforce, retain them, and continue to grow. And especially, I think there's a growth shortage of our trades folks, men and women, doing the task at hand. Like I say, COVID really shook everything up for us, and industries and everything want to keep growing. So I see more of a request or a presence for doing things easier, better, faster, and that's where that automation and technology starts to come into play. But yeah.
What do you see in the area of fall protection?
Fall protection, there's, some companies years ago, if you were to take a fall and you're hanging off the edge, obviously there's a rescue plan already in place, hopefully, and you got a limited time while you're being suspended there to kind of get rescued before you pass out, or, more complications happen. Trauma straps are being included in our fall arrest equipment. Stirrups, basically, you jump into to get the weight off your inner thighs for when you're being suspended. There's new automation in self-rescue equipment, leading edge SLR, self-retracting lanyards made out of ribbons or steel cable if they're in a nasty environment where there's a lot of cut hazards. Some of the fall arrest equipment now, it's nice to wear. It's not heavy. It's not cumbersome the way that they designed the product or built a spine into the back of it. So you're not carrying all that weight on your shoulders. It's distributed across your body and onto your hips more. And again, it's back to the earlier question, right? How do we keep people into the gear? What's making it more comfortable and less cumbersome? It's guys can walk around with a bit of gear on their back, and you could do it all day, given the design and how it's made. And every time you turn around, there's a new product. Rescue equipment and poles, like I say. Everybody's working at heights, so it's something that's always on the go.
What about the area or topic of confined spaces? Confined
space, it's, a couple extra D-rings to the shoulders for retrieval. And again, not every manufacturer, but most manufacturers have their spin or version on confined space. And again, years ago would have been a rope and a pulley, but you have these different tripods and retrieval systems for confined space applications where, we're not using a hand crank or pulling someone up on a rope kind of thing. You got stuff that's set up to attach a cordless drill, and you can kind of whiz somebody out of a bad situation pretty fast. And then the confined space, loops right into the difference in all the different gas monitors and all that detection equipment to make sure that people, don't get themselves into a situation where it's a nasty environment without them knowing. And a lot of that stuff's come a long way too, because different hibernation cases. Some products are good to come out of the package and they're good for a few years, but you can kind of preserve the life of that if you have it in a special hibernation case. All this stuff is very expensive equipment, so we want to make sure we're protecting it and getting the most out of it while, the workforce has it.
One area that has concerned me as I've done workshops around the province over the last few years is in the area of rescue. Whether it's rescue at heights, rescue in confined spaces, whatever. What have you seen as far as changes, and what do you have available for organizations that want to up their game when it comes to rescue equipment?
Well, first, I think obviously we're becoming way more safety focused as we grow and learn more of our industries and technologies out there. Like I mentioned, recently, I just kind of had my eyes on with a past safety show I was at, this self-rescue pulley system. Basically, if I was my equipment broke, if I was in a man basket or a lift and I needed to get down, it's actually designed for me to go over the rail, and I can descend controlled at 4 feet per second. These are things I'd never seen when I was on the tools, and it's just more, as new safety people come into play, everybody's kind of reviewing all their old records and plans, and it's a good thing because things change on sites, and maybe that rescue plan didn't get updated. So obviously the administrative control in that respect, but also this rescue pole system is really neat. I seen the other day it's a telescopic lightweight aluminum pole that you're able to slip a carabiner to the hook, that if you were hanging over a rail and I needed to get at you, I can kind of send the pole down and attach an extra line to your D-ring and then kind of retrieve you in that respect. Again, my past life, I never seen equipment like this, so it's really neat and interesting to see the new innovations and to kind of bring it to market. It's actually something that a few of my customers are currently talking about to make sure, like you say, that go bag, that rescue bag is correct and the right thing to have on site.
Where have you seen the biggest increase in demand when it comes to safety equipment today versus, even 2, 3, 4 years ago?
It's a sticky wicket. We want, like I mentioned before, thin gloves. We want people to keep PPE on. Trying to find that there's no such thing as I have the answer and this is it. It's very much still kind of what are you doing, how are you doing it, and why do you need to wear whatever PPE. Employee education on how these ANSI standards represent, our cotton, puncture, abrasion resistance, knowing the workforce, knowing why they're wearing what they're wearing. But really, the demand is sizing, like we mentioned before about women. Like I never carried size 5 gloves. It's a double extra small, but now it's kind of a standard stock item. Like I mentioned before, I sell a lot of glasses and gloves, and that's typically the pain points on job sites. People are getting stuff in their eyes and they're getting hurt. Before, I never had any gloves in my past life with impact protection, where gloves have special rubber padding built into the back of hands. You can think of guys having to do a maintenance task on a piece of equipment, and it's a tight quarters, and they're in there with their hand tools, and something slips, something breaks, and then they're really pushing, and their hand is now traveling into a sharp corner or a blade and stuff like that. The demand for that kind of stuff is definitely increased. Again, speaking from my own past life, I never seen back of hand impact protection gloves in my former roles, but now it's again very much a stock and standard item for a lot of folks. These gloves, it's never, nothing's ever proof. Like there's no such thing as something your chainmail, plate armor, whatever you want to think or call, but it's resistant, and it can lessen, 20 stitches to the back of a hand to maybe a slight laceration and stuff like that. And then ultimately that's the goal, is to keep our workforce safe and to go home. And if the PPE can lessen a potential injury, that's what it's all about. So it's neat too, as well, being a distributor. So I have the advantage of talking to the multiple manufacturers and go over with their reps their product lines and what they bring out to be new and innovative. So a few years back, I think cut protection was only up to a level 5. Now it has an A9 rating. Is the highest cut rating you'll find in a glove, which basically allows someone to take the equivalent of 15 pounds of force with a straight razor blade on the back of their hand without it kind of blowing through the glove, which, again, like I mentioned before, that would lessen, obviously, any potential injury is the goal.
What do you have in the area of hard hats and safety footwear to offer protection?
Yeah, well, there's some good change coming into Brunswick. We know that we're going to be moving the same as Nova Scotia and other parts of the country to a Type 2, being lateral side impact. And I know chin straps and hard hats that already have chin straps included are something that's kind of really taken over a lot of conversations. You think about, okay, we're donning fall arrests, but what happens if a guy takes a fall and then the hard hat goes flying, and then hits somebody else, stuff like that. Guys working at heights, falling off, keeping it on them. Footwear, steel toe was steel toes. You just had to have your green triangle CSA approved work boot wear. Now there's safety sneakers, and we have composite products that are as strong as steel, and you have your bottom of your foot, your insole protected by a shank, your full coverage protection, safety toe caps. It's, again, every different manufacturer supplier has their own spin on that. The materials are oil, water resistance. I seen a neat product the other day. I always used to get quite upset. I burnt up a lot of boot laces, obviously, as a welder to slag in that application. And one company has basically a very fine steel aircraft cable with a coating on it that you can, change out your lace for this, and it has a ratcheting system to kind of tighten it. So hopefully you're not burning through that stuff, and that's just a new innovation that I've seen actually a few weeks ago, which is pretty neat. But the
chin straps.
Chin straps.
Let's go back to that for a second. What are you hearing? Are you getting, or is there any kind of buy-in out there when it comes to chin straps? I mean, the whole concept of hard hats is great, but as you mentioned, and we all know what happens if you do fall. Depending on how they're being worn and everything else, they're going to move. They're going to possibly fall off. So you really aren't going to get any kind of protection. Chin straps, in a way, in an ideal world, would be ideal for everyone to wear. But as we know, there's people that'll say, no, I don't want to.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm kind of coming a little bit from the old school. It's a culture change. It's a mentality that we're trying to, again, educate the workforce on why these things are happening and why it's going to turn into a new standard, and it's ultimately for everyone's protection, right? Again, it's very much a catch-up game on that respect. There's not really a whole lot out there for options for people like myself to carry or sell, stuff like that, to have the proper CSA rating and something that already has a chin strap built into it. We carry and sell a product through PIP Canada, a Rocky style. Rescue Rocky is the name. Climbing hard hat. It has no brim, but it has a very nice suspension system where through the shell it has the chin strap built into it, and it's just that's it. That's the standard option, and you have it included. I've seen now more of my customers slowly kind of moving and adopting that, and it's really nice to kind of see the management at these sites really bring in the workforce to have a chat, not just try to drive it down the workforce's throat. Nobody really likes just being told that is it, and here it is. Working with the workforce, educating them, bringing them into the conversation, and okay, we're not doing plant-wide, but we're going to have the electricians, sample this. They're going to deck out the 6 or 7 gentlemen or ladies doing that role on a site, and then you kind of get the snowball rolling down the hill, and as people get to wear some stuff and get used to it, yes, it's a bit of adjustment, and some guys find it cumbersome or they don't like that feel, but it's like everything. You a bit of time and practice or wearing it, you get used to it, and it just becomes the new standard.
Are there any items that you're seeing a demand for that you're having a hard time to find equipment or solutions for?
Well, it goes right back in hand with, the very big to the very small are the bane of my existence. It's some gentlemen are so big that it's hard to find a hard hat for them. You know what I mean? Certain manufacturers vary differently on if a hard hat is more egg-shaped, as opposed to a perfect circle. The depth and the suspension of where it sits into the shell. Same thing when it comes to the gloves. Certain makes and models only go, so big or so small. We're carrying size 5, like a double extra small to a 3XL, and some of our glove lines that we carry at Chandler. But even still, I find sometimes my smallest glove is still not fitting. Some of the folks, there's again, PPE is a tricky one because we are all so different, from male to female, from me to you to anybody. We're all built differently. It's still a catch-up game, to be honest.
Yeah, I had a young man approach me one day at a workshop, and he was having a hard time getting safety boots. And I forget the exact size, something like 16, 17, size 17 work boot. And he said, I can't find them.
Yeah, and even some bigger gentlemen, go back to the fall arrest. I know we reached out, and me and my support team really looked around and struggled to find something for a bigger gentleman, and even found a company down in Texas. It was, I forget the name of the company, but it was basically, everything's bigger in Texas, right? So, but even them, their biggest harness, I didn't meet the requirement for the height and weight of this gentleman. And again, it gets tricky because you want to help, you want to produce and get something to that person so they can enter the workforce to go make their money for their family. But again, sometimes it's not in existence yet. As somebody that hasn't made it that big or that small or has figured that out. But I'm happy to say it's not something I come across a whole lot, but it still happens.
So as you meet with the different sales reps and become aware of new products, new technologies, and so on, what are you seeing as far as trends in PPE?
Well, like I mentioned, the impact pad, back of hand protection, impact protection, that's something that wasn't really on my radar when I first joined Chandler here a few years ago, but now it's kind of standard practice, and again, I applaud upper management. I've been involved with some hand safety or glove audits. It's really neat that we come into a group and we're walking around with the mill manager or whoever it may be, and basically take some time to walk through a site, and discuss what's the highs and the lows of the current PPE in use, and then, work with whichever distributor at the time to try to find that new solution or bring in some products to trial. But you got to go through some of the weeds to find the flower that works on that site. You know what I mean? So sometimes it turns into a bit of a long process, because some spots have a very specific task at hand, and then it's, like I say, it's just very hard to find that proper fit for that task.
One area I guess we didn't talk about, and that is hearing conservation. What do you have available to offer to clients when it comes to hearing conservation?
Yeah, hearing protection. Well, our classic, disposable earplugs. Companies are coming out now with some equipment. We just trialed some from 3M, a little speaker box and a software system that the disposable earplug has a little wire hookup built into it that, if we slip some safety glasses, we can kind of clip on the arms of your glasses to hold, and it plugs into the actual plug, and the speaker will blow a bunch of high decibel sound at the person, and it'll give a live readout on your left ear or your right ear. And again, it goes back to the employee education. A lot of people are wearing those earplugs, but if you glance at it, it looks like it's almost going to fall out of their ear. A lot of people aren't wearing them correctly. So going through a site with this equipment and kind of getting everybody to understand that, you got to reach behind your head with your opposite arm and pull your ear back, and to make sure you open up that ear canal to kind of really stick that earplug in there to get the proper hearing protection. And then when you get into some areas, obviously, where the decibel rating is over 100, a lot of sites, people are looking for double ear protection. So typically they're wearing a plug, and then obviously a hard hat's in use, so you have a cap mounted earmuff system that would go over that as well if they need a double protection. And then also, I know, tap into the other division of Chandler, a lot of chatter about, okay, that's great, we got hearing protection, but I need to talk to you Pearly on the other side of this machine, and me and you haven't got our certificate in lip reading, so we can't communicate. So now we're having earmuffs come into play that have built-in radios. You know what I mean? It's drowning out all of that heavy machinery noise around us, but at least you can click into your radio and I can hear you. That's something that's been coming more into play. Different types of earplugs allow me to hear you, but drown out a lot of the ambient noise. We're talking stuff with radio and Bluetooth in it now. But then they also get sticky, because in some spots, they'll allow earbuds or people to listen to their music per se, and that potentially opens up the door for other hazards. They're not focused, stuff like that. But and also another neat one, I guess, talking about earplugs. PIP Canada's got a product that's a bio-based. It's a plant-based material that it's made out of, and it's the bane of some sites come this spring of the year. And if you have an outside workforce, guys are done in at a shift and they're taking earplugs out, and typically they're not hitting a garbage can, and they're in the snowbanks, and you get a sea of yellow dots throughout a parking lot or a spot like that. This new product line coming out now, being bio-based, is biodegradable. Once it's crushed and comes into a contact with an organic, the majority of that product will break down. So, being environmentally friendly and thinking about stuff like that is pretty neat to see.
What do you have in the area of respirators? What are you seeing there for changes?
As a welder, the welding trade as a whole sometimes is hard to get the guys to wear, your classic half-mask respirator, full-face respirators. But one, when it comes to respiratory protection, I really like seeing is the new innovations coming in for PAPRs. These systems where you have be it a belt on your hip or a backpack system carrying a special piece of equipment that's pulling air in from the atmosphere, and depending on the filters, it's cleaning it, pumping it through a hose from that to the back of my hard hat or helmet, and then it floods over to your head and down through your face to keep clean air washing over the welder. Some of them have hoods built into them to kind of really keep that contaminant of welding smoke. Typically, it's rolling up, hitting your chest and under your chin, and it's in your face and that. But and it's come more pronounced with these PAPRs, because I feel like with the change in the workforce, some job sites are trying to be a bit more lenient and work with the workforce, be it whatever reasoning that some guys want to keep their beards and stuff like that. I remember going on job sites before and being handed a shaving cream and razor if I had a bit of stubble, because it was just a complete no-no. You're not getting on this job site with, us worried about the fit of your respiratory protection on your face. So I know that that's something that's it's been talked about quite frequently, and honestly, more and more people are requesting this type of equipment because, again, be it why or whatever, we need everybody working. So if you need to keep your beard and we want to keep you working, then we're going to try to work with that. So these PAPRs are something that's really starting to kind of take off in the market, and more people are going into that, looking to keep our employees healthier. Guys having to jump inside of, think of a big tanker hauling oils and fuels and across the road, and obviously guys got to do repairs and maintenance on stuff like that. It's hard sometimes to flush air through a system and to keep it all clean, but if we could throw a PAPR on them, and then we don't got to worry about them as much and keep them safe.
To finish our podcast off, I've listened to you today, and you talk about the challenges of organizations to keep workers, yet there's a challenge to also work safely. That seems to probably be presenting a really good challenge for workplaces these days, and to meet the two, to be able to keep your workers, yet keep them safe, yet provide the right kind of PPE that's going to allow you to achieve both goals.
Yeah. It's funny and fun sometimes when I walk into a spot, and obviously I sell myself as the guy who used to be on the tools on your job site. I've been a contractor. I've worked in a lot of the spots I currently sell to now, and I sometimes get job offers. They want to bring me in for the tools and the trades out of it, but there's such a shortage of trades folks now, and I'm in southern New Brunswick. There's a lot of construction. I was in Moncton most of this week to look at the amount of cranes in the air. It's a good sign for construction and an industry, and that requires our men and women working. Like I said, be it different religious beliefs or whatever the case might be, or your size. I'm really been pumped and excited to meet the management of these different spots and how much thought and energy is going into what do we need for Johnny or Susie on a site, and what's best for them, what keeps them safe, what keeps them going, because everybody wants to come in and do a good job and to punch their day and to walk home in the same or better condition than you came in. It's about getting the job done and going home safe to our families. And that's where, like I mentioned before, like some of these hand safety and glove audits, I've done a lot of these now. And it's great to go back to a site in a year and then learn that they just spent a whole year without any hand injury. And I don't know if it has anything to do with the actual new PPE we brought in, or just going through that practice of showing the employees that, you get a say, you get some control over what goes on your site. It's not just the way it is. Like, let's talk, let's figure it out. The inclusiveness from management to the people on the floor is something I've been really impressed since I came aboard to Chandler and talking to my customer group. And like you said, we want to keep them going, keep them working, and keep them safe. And it's very much a team effort, and that's been really great to see.
Well, look, Josh, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us on today's podcast. Very interesting to get an update on what's going on with PPE. Thank you very much. And for folks that are listening to our podcast, as always, we'd love to hear any ideas you have relative to future topics or speakers on our podcast. Stay safe. We'll see you next week.